All right, we are now recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's CAHDA webinar. We're coming to you live on October 29th. CAHDA means learning in Creek, and today you're going to be learning about community responsibility, mitigating hazards, preparing for and responding to emergencies, and recovery strategies. This is part 4, provided by David Whitlow, who's a senior law enforcement consultant with the Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. I'm your webinar facilitator today. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could be with us today. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law pictured here. So just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Here on this new platform, we want you to be familiar with the new lingo. So know that all of the webinars are going to be called virtual classes, and you can find all of today's course materials in the courses section. Whenever you log on, you'll see that green banner at the top of the screen letting you know that a webinar is happening live, and you can just click on that green banner and you will be able to join. When you do join, it's going to conduct an audio test for you. So please select listen only for us. That way we can avoid any kind of audio feedback as people join. And if you get on and you realize that the sound of the webinar is playing through a different speaker than you would prefer, you can just click on that little phone icon down at the bottom of your screen, and it'll bring up a list of your mic and your speaker devices, and you can choose the you can select the correct device that you wish to use. We have some great ways to interact during the webinar. So know that there is a list of important links in both the shared notes as well as the chat. So there's a link for today's webinar feedback survey. There is a link for today's presentation slides that you can download. You could register for our weekly newsletter so that you can know when our webinars are happening. There is a website that you can bookmark so that you can log into CAHDA easily in the future. And all of our webinars archive has moved to our YouTube channel. So I have that link for you as well as a link to connect with us on LinkedIn. And then all of these webinars that have been part of this series have led into an in-person training happening at the Native Learning Center next month. So there is a link for you to register for that. It is a free training. Something else you can do besides interacting with us in the chat box is that you can choose to set a status for yourself. So if you click on your name in the users list and then click on set status, you could mark it that you are away, that you want to raise your hand, that you're undecided, confused, sad, happy. You could show applause or thumbs up or thumbs down. And then you are able to clear those statuses or switch them out throughout the webinar itself. Just want to give you a final heads up that if you click on the red menu icon to the far left of your screen, it does pull you out of the webinar. You can easily rejoin by clicking on that green banner at the top of the screen, but just a heads up that if you do click on anything on that red menu panel, it is going to pull you away from the webinar. So just a friendly reminder. All right, folks, without further ado, it is with great pleasure I introduce your webinar instructor today, David Whitlow. And David, you are now presenter. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Brooke, and shout out to the team at the Native Learning Center. It's actually awesome for them to be able to provide this platform for us to get online and reach out to more people and have messages that are important to community safety. Welcome to the last of our 4 webinar series on emergency management. Today, as Brooke said, we're concentrating on community responsibility, mitigating hazards, preparing for and responding to emergencies, and recovery strategies. A couple of points I wanted to make. So time is not available during and after emergency. It's squeezed really tight on behalf of everybody. So taking the time today, start learning to get up to speed, making plans, doing some outreach. Those are things that are actually excellent. I'm glad you're part of it. And also while you're listening today, I talked a little bit about community, greater community. We give you some information related to how to access more information. That is for your purposes so that you can view it through your personal lens and how you'd interact with that to keep your family safe. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. Amy Osceola Latchford is the owner. She's a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. It's certified by the Small Business Association, been around for about a year and a half. Will Latchford is the president, brings 30 years in public safety working for the Seminole Tribe. I'm one of their consultants from a large group that they have around the nation, and I'm happy to be here today. A little bit about myself. I'm a Mohawk. I'm from the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve. It's just along the Canada-US border of upstate New York. I spent 30 years mostly in tribal policing, where I started on my own reserve, and I worked for more than 20 nations. I became a police chief and responsible for emergency preparedness at the executive level. My talk today not only comes from my time working at the executive level in policing and coordinating with the community, but I also lived and took a direct hit from Hurricane Ian in Florida. I was a member of the community, not of the emergency staff. So that was my first time being in a hurricane, and it's probably my last time being in a hurricane, but actually a lot of experience I gained to help for today as part of living through it most recently. Today, our webinar delves into the aspects of building collaborative approaches for public safety in Native American communities. We'll address how you personally fit within overall community strategies to ensure resilience that aligns with the NAHASDA principles by understanding how to prepare and recover from disasters. I have a little bit of problems here with my mouse, so just give me a second. For some reason, it won't kick. Oh, there we go. Nope. I apologize for this. I just, my mouse is struggling to connect for some reason. There we go. Community diversity. A one-size-fits-all version of a plan is not realistic. Although tribal communities have things in common, like preserving our environments for future generations and commonalities and traditional practices, we have unique ways of doing that. The best ideas in one community do not automatically transfer to others for many historical and present-day considerations. Information in this presentation tries to give a general understanding of trends and nuances impacting Native communities, with the recognition that we are all at different levels of readiness as far as emergency preparedness is concerned. Some communities have entire emergency planning departments with extensive plans compared to others that are in the preliminary stages of increasing their capacity to deal with a major emergency. You might already have most of the work completed and from the greater community that we're already speaking about, if your community has that already started, but some have nothing or very limited. So there's also very limited, limitations of available resources from one community to another, where one may depend entirely on their neighbors or supplementary resources for support. So you might be looking at this and trying to have to reach out to others to help you move forward. Some communities may have really strong cultural practices, while others may not make that a priority as far as emergency preparedness is concerned. And you'll have to tailor fit a plan that meets your individual needs per community. Our information is not meant to override what might have already been done or what is best for you locally, but it may enhance it. But if on the worst case scenario, revert back to your policies or your local communities first. The NAHASDA Safe and Healthy Guiding Principles. The tribal government, through their various departments, responsibly promote the general welfare of the community, ensuring safe and healthy environments. Emergency preparedness is everyone's responsibility to ensure the community is resilient and can endure natural as well as human-caused disasters. So you have to know where to fit in the overall plan in order to preserve your success in a disaster. You cannot expect anyone else to be responsible for you and your family. So Brooke's going to take over, and we're going to play a little slide about FEMA tribal engagement. Before we play that, I'd just like to give you a couple thoughts to think about when you're doing it. So they're talking about the introduction to their connections to tribal support. In there, they speak of tribal liaisons, amount of paperwork, cultural competency, displaced people, working with landless tribes, financial support, training and resources. So if you get to know your local departments while creating your personal plans, just consider they will likely be very busy during and immediately after, so likely inaccessible to you. Okay, Brooke, can you play that? Brooke, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, is that playing?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't
You
hear
hear
it. No, it's not playing on my end.
Like the video's not playing, or you can't hear the sound?
No, the video is not playing.
Oh.
I don't know if anyone's online with us or not, but if it's playing.
Not right this moment. Here, let me try sharing it again. So yeah, it's showing on my screen and it's playing. It says that I am sharing it.
Let me try click on the play. Yeah, now it's playing.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I guess you have to hit play on your end. That's good to know. Okay, I'm going to give presenter back to you, David. The
Okay.
video has finished. Let me stop sharing it. But yeah, I guess they'll have to hit play on their end, so that's good information to know. Let me make you presenter again.
Okay, so just finishing out on that video, as you talk about, you need to understand the community roles and their liaisons, but if you don't have that stuff, then you're gonna have to, you can use this and maybe start to inspire people to get engaged with FEMA for the resources that are available to your communities. Hey, Brooke, your speaker's not muted. FEMA tribal declarations. So there's numerous examples online where FEMA works with different tribes and emergencies with tribal entities. So FEMA is a primary federal source for education and resources. There are other state and private resources available as well. So if you just click on the links beside that I've got attached here, I'll just click on and I'll have to share my screen, and then we'll once I share my screen, we'll be able to communicate about it. So I expect you can see my screen by now. So disaster declarations for tribal nations. This is just a FEMA link that I have. So first you could go in, and under the first part, you could select a tribe or your tribe or any tribe for that matter that's associated to FEMA. Learn about disasters that have occurred, the types of that disasters down the side. So from 1 tornado up to 101 biological FEMA incidents, and I'm guessing that has to do with COVID. But for today, we're just going to click on the flood, and then we're going to go to one that's local to where I'm living now. So this was a Wisconsin severe storm, tornado, straight line winds, and flooding. Again, on it, you have lots of information about quick links, the period it happened, things that have happened related to it. So if you just go down and for this one, click on mitigation assistance resource guide. So on the resource guide, you can click on it and go down to page 5 on this one, for example, and then it says purpose of the guide. One goal of FEMA Region 5 is to advance mitigation across the region's 6 states and 34 tribal nations. So in reading that, you know that there's engaged 34 tribal nations amongst these 6 states in this section. So they are reaching out. But if you go down to how to use this guide, more importantly, there's usually sections in there, categories, local planning, structure, natural systems and protection, and under 4, education and awareness. So education and awareness is something that you would use more locally and in your communities or when you're creating your plans. So you're looking at different types of disasters. When you go down to education and awareness, you could go down and every section has, it talks about drought, local planning. This one, for example, we're going to go down education awareness program. So that might be a key area for you to start upon. So what would you do? Educate water residents on water saving techniques and things you would do. Install low flow water saving shower heads, toilets, turning water flow off while brushing teeth, adjusting sprinklers, etc., etc. Another section on education awareness is educate farmers on soil and water conservation. So they want to rotate crops and practice whatever. So just different ways that you would help with saving water. And then further is purchase crop insurance. So during a drought, that's something major. That's a way to mitigate some of the damage that is caused during those periods of time. So back to the slide, which I'm not going to flip to because it takes a while to load back up. But we'll talk about the FEMA tribal training curriculum. So the goal of that is to collaborate with tribal governments to build emergency management capability and partnerships to increase the resilience of tribal nations and communities. So if you were to click on that, and the first thing shows up is they have a FEMA tribal curriculum. So this is available to your greater communities, but you may have an access point to access it depending on what your community does offer or anyone that's involved in it. So yeah, tribal training flyers, tribal course schedules, things like that, that would be important to you. And if you were to click on the individual course descriptions, it goes to another page. And there's a variety of courses on here, but here's one that might be important for your own planning is continuity of operations. So it talks about how to do it and what will be involved in it. So looking at a wide range of emergencies. So somebody that may have taken this training may be available for you in your communities. And they also have training and lessons on here. So if you just went into the search bar and clicked in something like animals and emergencies, it could bring you down to another site that I have. And this is interesting for us. So there are all kinds of things you can do in here. And this is just actually a class. So anyone can go on, take them. You can go through it, see if anything applies to you building your own program. But most importantly here is how people respond to animals and disasters. So where they've talked about other problems include significant impact on public mental health due to emotions owners feel for their animals. These issues are particularly evident in seniors and children. And then mental health issues are feelings of guilt, bereavements, and anger. So some people are more concerned with their animals in disasters than they are for themselves. So it may impair their ability to think sensibly, I guess you call it. And they get themselves caught up. So evacuation failures, re-entry attempts, unsafe rescue attempts. And there's also reports of owners being injured or killed attempting to rescue their animals from burning or flooded houses. So those are concerns that in emergency planning that you kind of want to try to eliminate if possible. I'm just going to go back and try to stop sharing my screen. Community roles. A community-wide collaborative approach is required to ensure preparedness for emergencies, focus on respectful relationships, and seeking resources that support your goals while working together to implement strategies that mitigate loss from disasters, natural or human cause, is at the root of resilience-focused plans. So you can seek resources, community resources, like the fire department or health services, and you may have a unique circumstance they need to consider, like care of an elderly parent who has mobility, cognitive challenges, and needs to be evacuated. So if everybody knows that beforehand, then when they come to help you, they're ready for it, and they may have to bring different equipment. They may have to use different methods to help with rescuing you. So you need to be seek that prior as part of your planning. The stages of emergency management. So I know we've talked about this, you've heard it a few times during this period, but in this case, we're using mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And it's maybe a little bit simpler way to start talking about that is mitigation. It takes place before or after. Preparedness is before, response is during, and recovery is after. Mitigation is anything that prevent or minimize the effect of the hazard or emergency, like buying flood insurance. Preparedness that you're doing before is you're preparing to handle. Plans or preparation to save lives and response to rescue. Response is you want to respond safely, maybe seeking shelter, evacuations. It also includes the mobilization of emergency staff that you may have thought you could depend on, knowing that they're going to be busy, that you have to have plan B. Recovery is after the fact, and actions taken to return to normal. So this section is simple, like repairing power, getting food, water, rebuilding. The section's often overlooked in training or planning, and I think it's overlooked for many reasons, but I think it's most likely a time it takes to be complete, and everybody is exhausted from responding for their initial emergency needs. Tribal support resources. So there's a number of tribal support resources. And again, this is just a little quick search located on the FEMA. So the map that's in here is a national map showing in-person engagements with FEMA to tribal resources, and this is from the 2023. So all those dots on there are people that have been in contact with FEMA and have in-person meetings. So if you live in any of those areas and you're looking for some more information, that might give you a little bit of a angle of an area where you can start to reach out to get some help. So I'm going to share with you my screen again. You can find different resources like territorial regions that you can have on here. So let me just share my screen. And I'm just going to give it a second here. Hopefully it's loading and you can see my screen before I move on.
Yeah, we can see what you're sharing.
You can?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is the National Congress of American Indians site. They do some work, but most importantly what this for is if you're looking for resources that are near you. So they have a regional map that you could actually go onto the regional map. And then if you were looking for some information, for example, you want to search emergency preparedness, you click on the search button, you can go on there, and then it shows things that they've done with emergency management. I didn't even get the word finished, but has different things that you can lean on. And they actually had, in this case, 2021 summit, but in there they talk about emergency services and disaster management. So they're an advocacy group, they're a training group, they're another source that you may have to use when you can look out. So the next link is taking us to the state emergency response commissions. And what the Emergency Response Commission is basically responsible for emergency planning and Community Right to Know Act. So this is important for you because every tribal liaison is connected and they should be able to talk to you about any of the chemicals or other hazards you may not know about. So by clicking on the fact sheet, you can go down, they have a section on tribal resources, and then tribal resources takes you to chemical emergency preparedness and prevention on tribal lands. And then in it talks about how does it apply. So for your own personal training or your multi-purpose unit or wherever you may be living, you have things like chemicals in the community, chemicals that are present at each location, potential hazards that these chemicals may cause. So you should be able to access your community chemicals that may pose a risk and plan accordingly for that.
We're back on the slides.
Okay, perfect. Another area to find information that is good for your community planning. I don't know where you live, so it's kind of a more general information, but this is what I've done. Most communities have started emergency preparation, so you can search locally. So I'm living now in Wisconsin, so I can click on the Oneida plan, and I'm just going to share my screen again. I probably should have just left it up and then I didn't have to wait for the delay, but I don't know if I'm up yet or not, Brooke.
It's up now. Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. So this is, there's some good information on here. So this is from Oneida. It's not all on web or available on the web that you can see, but the actual document is here in a PDF form. So if you took the time to read through it, you can help learn some of the strategies you might want to consider. There's things on here like risk assessment, hazard occurrences were updated, and highest hazard risk rankings were assessed by the steering committee that they had. They have mitigation strategies on here. And then one thing that I think is important that it's not remiss to address the fact that the plan was updated during COVID. Necessary changes to tribal departments and staff have impacted normal operations, will make hazard response and mitigation implementation more challenging. It may take years or decades for the United Nations to return to the same level of capacity with that in mind. So that's another, we just talked about mitigation and maybe why it's not as easily measured and done as strategically as others, but you have to consider that time it's going to take. So more information that is actually good, that if you have a local plan to you could go on and look at some of the stuff, but they're talking about strategies, updates from the previous plan. So here they provide resources for pet care during natural hazard. It's removed. So they have different reasons that they've done these things. You may have down a little further, develop mass evacuation plans. Maybe they didn't consider that for COVID and they never had it in. So these things change. So another message, I guess, is when you go on one and you can actually see where they're changing, you need to prepare for that personally at all times, or you or your building or your neighborhood, wherever you may work. I'm just going to zip down to their section because it's another point in here that I think is important. So here for hazards, so when you're developing your own plans, if this has already been done for you, it saves you a lot of work and time and research. You can go on and, so for example, their hazard risk ranking, they rank from 1 to 9 as far as natural hazards, winter storms down to wildland fires. So you should include that if that's part of your area. That should be part of your home planning. Human caused hazard, which is kind of new to this, but cybersecurity, hazardous spills, manure spills. So those rank, and then they have mitigation stuff that they're going to talk to as they go through that. So if you go on and link to the other link is a link to the Seminole plan. So this one's actually very interesting. So you can see the difference. The other one is more in a PDF format. They may have upgraded it, but this is what I found online. So because I lived in here and this is where I was part of hurricanes, so I went on this site before I even moved. But down here, this is all the Seminoles emergency planning stuff. So they have a hazard awareness guide, and if you clicked on the hazard awareness guide, it takes you to information, gives you tabs across the top, tribal support information, hurricane safety guides, emergency notifications, make sure you're notified. So they're kind of leaning you towards the information that you would be important to you. Click on shelters, how to shelter, sheltering outside, sheltering in place, emergency sheltering, special needs, what to bring. So very good information that you would include in your personal planning. And one point I wanted to make that I think is interesting, we talked about animals and people caring for them and not leaving them. Right on their site, this is unfortunately we are unable to accommodate pets, nor do we have infant or children furniture. So having seen that, some people are willing not to go. They aren't going to leave their pets behind, and that's actually going to be where they end up and then the next part of it. So let me get back to the regular screen.
You're back on the slide.
Perfect. So some common challenges. Ineffective communication is one of the biggest logistical issues, especially when everybody is spread out and contact can't be made. So I'll give you a little bit of this on a personal side, besides the fact that as police, and I was always worried where people might be when I hear sirens or emergencies or something's happening that I know about. But in the last case, my daughter evacuated the last hurricane that just came through Florida because she's in a flood zone. They didn't get to leave till after midnight. They were with my grandchildren, and they just jumped in her car and headed away from where she was going to be. I asked that she kept in contact with me, that she let me know if they're going to stop and sleep so I know where that is, all kind of planning. Well, she was so tired, the kids were asleep, she just pulled over, not intending to go to sleep. I got fuel and then fell asleep. So that left me wondering and worrying, and that's very common. I would say that's probably the biggest issue that you have when you're trying to use some sort of system that we don't have a third party that's supporting us. So that's a big one in ineffective communication. Documentation gathering, updating and preserving and protecting it during a disaster or emergency. Assessing community risk, we just talked about that, and you have lots of information available. If you don't, we can find other ways to get a little bit more information that might be that might impact your planning. You need to know to keep keep it updated though. Like I said, things change, people change, and positions change, so make sure you keep updated with that. There's geographic challenges, remote people, as we know, it takes a long time for resources or support regularly. Add a big disaster to it, or everybody's busy and it may not come for days. Time, there's no time during and immediately after, so right now is the time to be planning that, and you can't plan it afterwards. However, we recognize that it's hard to do, hard to cut time apart for something that you're preparing. You don't know, it may or may not come. And money or resources for all stages of preparedness. You literally have to pay for stuff. So you have to pay for keeping up with supplies that you need to be stocking, anything that you might have to do, moving, buying stuff, that's all part of planning, and you need to be able to do that as well. Leadership. Adequate leadership is crucial, and everyone needs to know at all times who is in charge or responsible. So that I'm talking about your house, I'm talking about your community reservation. The chain of command, that would be the people in the leadership or in charge of something that you are relying on. You need to know who that is and when it changes, because it does change from people, whether they're tired or whether they're exhausted from helping. It's been days that they've had to take rest, they've shared, someone else has become in charge. You need to know who that is. So you need to be able to keep up with that all the time. And the bottom line is, if nobody is in charge, the system is likely going to fail. Trends, another thing you got to keep an eye on. So emergency manager roles are expanding day by day and have become very complex beyond responding to just natural disasters. They have capacity restrictions, transitioning now beyond just responding to encompass mitigation and recovery, along with preparedness, requires substantially increased resources and limited experience. So it used to be a lot of local emergency people that were doing this stuff, including me as police and fires and other emergency staff. So our expertise is actually getting at the incident, keeping everybody safe, responding, but then we didn't have to worry about chain management and supply chains and health coordinating with all the departments. That stuff is now becoming normal. So we're losing people because it's expanding. They're stressed out and workload's too heavy. So we need to be able to understand that things are changing and always going to be changing. Innovations in technology with AI, machine learning are force multipliers for handling vast data sets, helpful during times like COVID when we had such a broad range of information. We didn't know what was good, bad, or otherwise. Things like that now are getting streamlined a little bit more. But when it comes to things like UAVs and drones have also rapidly emerged as tools that have potentially to greatly enhance aerial assessments, search and rescue, supply deliveries to remote or inaccessible areas. But when even speaking to that stuff, if you think about it, some folks don't even have handheld phones. So moving into all this technology might be too much for them. You might have to help your neighbors or somebody else in your community that's not able to understand or even get involved in that. So they talking about trends might not be something that they're even interested in. Legal issues. Insurance considerations are the responsibility of everyone, including homeowners, tenants, and housing departments. Insurance is your first line of defense. However, issues can get complicated when there are disagreements between the appraisals and claims. So insurance, you need accurate records all the time. So it's simple as having a video going around your house, and then you can use that afterwards. But it's a responsibility of you, not your insurance company, to keep up. So what happens is when a claim comes in, you get arguing about what caused the damage, what was damaged, and then it gets into the court system or between appraisers and different departments that are adjudicating it. And it takes a long time to get those issues resolved. That's when it comes to non-tribal lands. Add tribal land law and it even gets a little bit more complicated. So due to treaties, sovereignty, unique rights, and it's kind of continually evolving. So judges are making decisions that other judges have to follow. So that adds more time to be resolved related to anything on tribal communities. And I'll have an example of insurance and the importance of it and making sure that you're up to speed with it. So in Ian, a neighbor canceled flood insurance because they didn't use it for 40 years. And then, and it was just prior to Ian, well, their house got flooded. It ended up being a big argument that they'd had it for all those years, but the reality was it was their liability. They canceled it, they chose to cancel it, and they ended up burning on it. Funding. So funding used to only come or be allocated from the annual operating budget of the tribe, therefore normally limited or not used at all when it came to emergency management. So now, and for small businesses, there's issues with funding. FEMA is a source of funding, but usually is more related to approved places. They also take advantage of local free programs. So there's lots of times where fire departments or emergency services are giving out things like smoke detectors, safety blankets. Maybe your community is giving it out. Take advantage of those free programs when you get it, when you have an opportunity. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And I don't know if we're shared yet or you can see it.
We're seeing the loading screen right now.
Okay, just let me know, Brooke, when it comes in. It's okay, I'll just speak a little bit, even though you may not be able to see my screen. So I have the Homeland Security. It's some grants that are available. You could go in and just search Tribal Homeland Security Grant Program. It showed up some grants. So the Department of Homeland Security announces $18.2 million in first ever tribal cybersecurity grants. And that was from July of this year. You have other grants. You got $15 million to eligible tribal nations to implement preparedness initiatives and help strengthen. And although they may seem like it's for the greater community, it's also for small businesses and other things that may need cybersecurity. So the only thing you want to make sure of is, since it's grant money, that there's dates on them, that you have to have submissions, you have to be able to write grants. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but you may decide that that's something that you would like or you might need access to, so you can access that. So I don't know if you can see yet. Brooke, can you see?
No, it just stayed on the loading wheel, unfortunately.
Okay.
It never
Okay,
popped up
that's
this
okay.
time.
So I moved over now to the Mountain Plains Small Business Affiliations, and
It just popped up.
oh, it's popped
It's
up.
on the Seminole plan.
Oh, it's on Seminole Pan, so it's probably still going to come over here shortly. Well, it's coming anyway. Maybe that's just the old one that's stuck on there. So anyway, if you went down, if you get to the Mountain Plains Small Business Affiliations, really the information on here is, it has, and this was done as a consortium and for a bunch of nations put together, and it was just a business plan created. So, but on it, it has stuff. So it has a type of grant, where they come from, whether they're funding information, whether they're anywhere you see planning or training that you could access. So for example, I'll click on the planning one for CDC emergency preparation and planning, and that link takes you to another part. And on it, the best part about this one is that EWONAP actually speaks directly to personal preparedness. So it talks about the whole community. Example, individuals needs to plan for disasters and emergencies and the disruptions that often result. So links below to learn how families, businesses, healthcare, government can prepare for disasters. So you got a bunch of links, which are actually really, really helpful for you when you're making your own plans. And you can go in, for one thing, is like preparing for your health, personal health preparedness, neighbors helping neighbors. So there's lots of links on there that take you further into some of the programs that are available to you. So besides grants, I don't know if you're up or not yet, Brooke, but the bottom one, the FEMA homeowner assistance. The FEMA homeowner assistance program is actually available. It's not a substitute for insurance and cannot easily compensate for all losses, but it does help meet basic needs. So you have funding for temporary housing while you're unable to live in your home. You have repair or owner occupied homes for repairs, even including privately owned access routes, driveways, roads, bridges, temporary housing units if you're not able to use rental assistance, funds for hazard mitigation assistance, repair or rebuild stronger, more durable homes, funds for other uninsured or underinsured disaster caused expenses. So that information is actually available, and if you, once you go on the links, you can get access to it, and it'll help you more specifically looking for it. But it comes with a word of caution. Down in Florida, where this program's in place, we have a bunch of communities that needed this assistance. They applied for it, and then it takes a while to get that stuff. So it's not like it's immediate. As you'll see in another part of the program, a FEMA video, it takes a long time, sometimes up to a year or years to get some of this funding. So although it's there, it's not meant to replace insurance. So you still need to make sure you're insured adequately. So the next slide, we talk a little bit about.
David, we're still seeing the Seminole plan screen.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's just stuck on that one.
Okay.
I think,
Give me 1 second.
yeah.
I'll try to switch it back.
Okay. Let me kick out of it. And then I'll share.
Should be back on the funding slide now.
Yeah, so I'm back on the funding slide. I'm going to try share it one more time here. See if it works.
I'm seeing FEMA and U.S. Small Business Administration.
Oh, cool, so it worked. Okay, so in this case, tribes used to depend solely on governments for funding, but things are changing. So many nations are now expanding their business profiles, including a myriad of industries which can support their service delivery. Private business endeavors like cigarette manufacturing and cannabis have extended spin-offs that allow very profitable endeavors like retail, construction, and service companies. Some communities have programs that support community needs, so you can't leave out local construction companies and volunteers that often offer resources during an emergency, like heavy equipment. Your neighbor or somebody may have equipment and human resources that can help. And if you work for a company that's large enough, and they hire a lot of non-residents, so that still live on the reservation, maybe you can have them search out supports that are available through their companies, that if the reservation can't help with their due to funding, that they may be able to reach out to there. But on the business and loan or low interest loans, there's also an application there. So how can FEMA disaster assistance may include financial help with immediate needs, temporary lodging, and home repairs, as well as other disaster-related expenses. And then further down, you may apply for low-interest disaster loans from the small business to help with expenses after a disaster. So those can be information if you run a small business out of your home, or if you are associated to a small business at all that you may need some more help with it. That may be an option for you.
We're back to the slide.
Okay, perfect. Relationship building. Everybody's priority should be to build positive, engaging relationships with the entire community to understand where they fit into the plan. You also need to do that. We also need to understand their limitations and responsibilities, especially related to an emergency. They are generally busy during that period of time for other reasons. So it's time to build it before, but you have to know that they come with their limitations. And there might be neighborhood events or committees, something that you could be part of. You can learn to build on everyone that's been there before. So this would be better if relationships were made before an incident. But an example of that is during Ian, we were in a community that was directly impacted. Our neighbors, we never talked about emergency planning. We had the clubhouse, they had a meeting, they did some presentations on it, but we never got together, never made a plan. A lot of people have been through it before. Sure enough, Ian comes and hits us, and it's disaster. So nobody is really coordinated on responding. There's a lot of places worse off than we are, so they're getting most of the attention. I was lucky enough to have a motorhome with a generator in it, so we were okay because we were out of power for a couple days, but the neighbors didn't, and they couldn't, simple as charging their phones. I mean, we couldn't get signal and all that stuff for a couple days either consistently. Stores were closed, so we kind of learned and went through that. But afterwards, we had a discussion, and then we said, okay, now that we learned, now we know. I had the motorhome, the other neighbors had generators, so for the next one, we kind of did a little debriefing and have a little bit of a better plan for going forward. So those are things that we could have done beforehand, but we didn't really realize. It was my first hurricane, and everybody downplayed it, so we didn't think we would need to have those discussions, but I did learn from it. So there's other things for relationships when sometimes you might have reluctance to meet from your emergency service departments. So that's police, fire, ambulance. I suggest ways to get into that door is just start off with an informal offer to an open house or something where they're not compelled to work in their role. So they're just coming as part of the community. It's almost a social, get to know each other, build some respect for each other. And then that's the goal of the first meeting. Any meetings after that, they might be concerned because they didn't know the answers. They don't know why they're coming. They don't know the intention of why they're being asked. So if you start building a relationship respectfully in the beginning and build on it, next time maybe give them time a little bit beforehand to prepare for some questions you may have about emergency planning or something that's going to help your street or your building. So those are ones that's a way to get them engaged. There's another option. So most emergency departments have a governing structure, like we have a board to direct the policing, and we have strategic planning that we do. So you want to seek an opportunity to become part of that, and then that way they have some records of it, and you become part of it. So you're not just kind of left out in the open. But I think the easiest one is to build a relationship without anything formal, and then you can build on that if that's not working. Finally, there's other times that we're coming into the units or you're into your community, you're on your street, and you can follow up with the police to find out what they were there for, or the fire department, and try to stop that from happening. But more importantly, build a relationship with them that's maybe you can prosper with it in the future. Relationship building affiliations. So you're going to need to separate your day-to-day to confirm what they can do for you during and after. So you also talk about the cultural department. They're responsible for ceremony, spirituality, sacred items, teaching, medicines, histories, spiritual leadership, other tenants and community groups, research and education departments, social services, elders and youth groups. Don't forget the youth. They are the future leaders of our communities. Community leadership, besides just the formal elected folks, there's lots of people in power that can help, that get things moving, whether they be traditional or spiritual help. Police, fire, ambulance, public works, maintenance, finance. So these people, like the police or the public works, maintenance, you may have already considered alternate plans for your area. And like, let's say there's storm, snow, access roads that they're going to clean. Maybe you already know that. So for part of your planning, you'll be able to understand what their roles may be, where they'll be able to come. Maybe they won't be able to come, but you need to make plans knowing what they do or what their plans are. So there's other options in there, like FEMA, when they come, they connect to the tribe. They don't connect to you individually. Maybe they do after a while when there's different processes in place, so you can't really depend on that either. Relationship of building affiliations continued. I'm talking a little bit commercial and external. So local businesses offer a lot of resources and potential avenues of communication and support. For us, gaming was a big thing. We had a big power outage that hit all of northeastern New York and Canada. It was going to be out for a couple of days. We had the casino, they had power that would last them. They said that we could last for 3 to 4 days running at full business opportunity. So maybe there's an opportunity that they can support local people there, and that if they have the ability to do that. You have retail businesses, construction, again, maybe they can dig you out. They have personnel that'll help. Maybe they have equipment that can dig you out. If they're on their way to somewhere that you're in their way, they might be able to stop and help you on the way out. External tribal communities. So we have a lot of extended families and social relationships to build at different things like powwows, and maybe you can go there or learn from their communities what they're doing. External non-tribal housing departments. So anyone local geographically is best. So they already know what you're going through, or they may be able to access it. And then they've already probably had something in place, because a lot of times they've been mandated from the government to have those things that are necessary for those types of emergencies. Partnership anxieties. So be careful not totally depending on others if possible. If you must rely on a partnership, always have a plan B, what that looks like. It can go beyond the resources, but you need to be thinking about that. So just looking at funding never stays the same. So remain sensitive to your partner's abilities to continue their support by looking at different reports and strategic directions. So FEMA just reported that they expect a $6.4 billion deficit by September 2024. So that was last month. They also experienced burnout. So you know things are going to change. Maybe there'll be more money put into it, but they're going to be experiencing some changes. So their support may not be what it was, and you have to stay aware of that. Given that tribal communities may be disproportionately impacted by public health emergencies, it's critical that tribal, state, and local governments engage with each other in coordinated planning for public health threats. So public health is already overwhelmed, so they're not likely able to support you like they do every day, and you need to know that. But it's a little bit of a worry, but if you have that, you know it, you've planned for it, then you know that they're not going to be there maybe when you need them. Creating a plan, why we have a plan. Securing community sensitive infrastructure, anything spiritually significant like sacred objects, protecting each other and supporting vulnerable people, the elderly, young children, impaired both physically and cognitively. Ensure you are prepared with communications, maybe how you're going to evacuate, shelter in place, mitigating the impacts of disaster on your homes, unprecedented tech opportunities and challenges, legal issues with recovering and responding. And again, we talked about that in the use of insurance, increase in frequency of disasters. There's an example in Florida, 2 major storms. I guess my first one in Ian was supposed to be the first one in 100 years or a century, and now it seems there's a couple more that followed, and they hit generally the same area, just a little bit up, but it still had the same impact, except people were more prepared or more listening this time. Understanding continuity of operations. So we talked about that. That's why I showed you that little training at the beginning. Maybe you have that in your community, but you need to know what their maintenance and emergency interventions like water, heat, power, AC, and shelter are that are going to work with you or be able to be used by you. And first steps in recovery is getting back to your home or feeling safe and secure, but we need to do it safely. So the answer is why is it responsible? It's because it's your responsibility and nobody else's. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. We like to rely on other services and think they're available, but even after what I went through in Ian, that's nothing compared to lots. There was not a lot of other services available, so you're doing it on your own. Risk assessments. All home plans require risk assessments. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to click on this link first so that it gives me time to share it. Yeah, I got it on my end. Just let me know if it comes in.
We can see it.
Well, perfect. So all HAM plans require risk assessments to determine the most likely hazard to be concerned with. Once a hazard is prioritized, then you can determine what effort you'll put in to address it and plan for it. Lots of tools online, and so in this case, what I'm showing you now is risk assessments from FEMA hazard list. They actually have included quite a few things in here, pretty inclusive, from aircraft accidents, lightning, sinkholes, tornadoes, fires, chemical, biological explosion. There's a thing in here even from accidents. So you would look at this list, what may or may not apply to you. You can literally take it out or leave it in. A lot of these things like hazmat, you don't know whether they apply to you. It could be a train running through your area, or a leak of fuel from a boat, or from something like a tractor trailer crash that causes a lot of grief. So I looked in the UNITA plan and they talked about manure spillage. So there must be something to do with manure and then it overflowing into the water. So if you look at these risks, you can take this list and make your own list from it, and then do some assessment, basically using that as a tool. I'm going to keep you online, and I'm just going to go to the next one. So the next one is public housing management planning. In it, there's a lot of good information here. Although it's designed for public housing planning, you can look at it and you see key elements on here, things like protocols for resident communications, temporary housing options. Those are things that are going to affect you immediately. What happens during response, so monitoring the safety and capacity of staff and residents, properties, partnering with agencies. There's secure and emergency shelters, which depending on the size of your emergency, every spring in Canada where I lived, there's communities, tribal communities get flooded in the north off the reserves. They're shipped out annually down to centers that are hundreds of miles away from their home, and they end up living there for a month while the water floods melt and the water recedes, and they go back to their homes. So they have good plans in place, but every year there's still things that come out of it that you have to learn from. You advocate for residents, documenting damages. Again, we talk about photos and videos and how important that is. Offers to help others when you can and support your own families. And on the next page, so we'll talk a little bit about recovering. The primary goal is to get back to where you were pre-disaster. Communications, again, we talk a little bit about communications. Effective communication during emergency can be a matter of life or death, and that's very common. So those are always a priority, and without them, things fail quickly. Collect updated emergency contact information. So this is good for you as you're in a bigger apartment building, your neighbors, stuff like whatever you're going to have to access and maintain that stuff too. Here they talk about current tenant directories. So maybe lots of people don't want to put in, if you're in a multi-housed unit where they don't want to put that stuff forward, they don't want to maybe know who's living in those units, but it's important, and especially when it comes to emergency management. And then notifying how you're going to get notified if you live in there, how you want to know how they're going to notify you and keep you updated during an emergency.
We're back on the slides.
Okay, perfect. Creating a plan, including our tribal uniqueness. So we want a plan that allows us to continue our tribal ways. Things like sacred sites or information may not be included in the greater community plan. It may be included, but it may not be for public exposure if you want to protect some of those sites or some of that stuff. So they might already have planned it if you have an emergency planning department that you would need to know about, and where it might come in to you that you may continue to have a plan for your locations where if you're continuing your ceremonies or any practices that you do. mental health and debriefing sites for Native communities using culturally appropriate strategies. So there may not be an external community with similar practices to fall upon, like different types of tribes living in the same area don't have the same things that they believe in or the same practices. So you might have to travel further away, or you might have to make alternatives for that. But in some cases, I know that our mental health strategies that are useful based on your where you come from or what you believe in are things that get you beyond just the regular textbook stuff. So if you have those circumstances, you need to put that in your planning. You may have to protect or cultivate cultural sensitivities, things like the plants used in ceremonies. Geographic challenges. Some nations cross international borders with Canada and Mexico, while others cross state boundaries, making it hard to delineate responsibility for funding and accountability. So I know a property where the international border of Canada and US passes right through their actual house. So in that case, you need to know where people are coming from to help you and be clear on that, because it's easy for them to say, well, that's not our responsibility. And that does sometimes happen, whether it be from the state to the province to the country to the neighbor. You need to have that line. So a lot of places that don't have these problems with crossing borders, it's easy to make sure you know where the funding and accountability comes from. Expanding roles and transforming fields. So communities are reclaiming culture and people are returning from urban centers. And folks returning may not understand the differences or services that aren't available in some of the tribal communities that you have been used to when you lived in a larger urban center, or the response that's not there that they expected. So if you have new people, new neighbors, I was kind of a new neighbor, not a tribal community, but had I known or been through hurricanes, it may have been a little bit different with our approach to the last one. So that's just identifying something that these people are coming from different backgrounds. They probably have different expectations, but if you're depending on them or they're depending on you for responding and for afterwards recovering, I think you need to know that. So we're going to watch another FEMA film actually. So I'm going to take that back. Brooke, you can take on, and then I'll have to load it. So from this one, I want you to identify your local liaison FEMA contact for reference. You'll hear them talking about it in here. If you have one, you need to know what that is. You have to stay updated on in case things change over time with everybody changes positions or responsible. You got to find out if there'll be available or an alternate method of communication to keep you apprised of anything that might impact you personally. This talks, it also introduces recovery. In fact, you can't depend on external resources. Funding is available. How long it takes, you'll hear how long the assistance will take. So can you play that, Brooke?
Just something important to note, folks. So the video should appear on your screen now. You're going to need to hit play on your end as well. So let us know in the chat if you're having any issues accessing the video or seeing the video, please. Okay, David, your presenter again.
Okay, I think we had the wrong one. We repeated, but there is another one that you'll get on the link, and we can actually be able to, you'll see it, but the key of it all is it's patience. They are there, everybody helps a lot during the stages. It's back in that recovery stage that it seems to be a challenge. So we're going to talk a little bit about recovery stage. It's the most challenging of all, but it must be kept a priority during planning. Most communities are good in the first stages, but homeowners need to recognize and prepare for things that could be different for extended periods after an event. There's still lots of people from many years ago from hurricanes that are dealing with problems that aren't able to be fixed, whether they be bridges or roads or something like that. So just know that sometimes things don't happen really quickly. Lack of concentration on the recovery stage. I think it might be just that everybody's worked so hard to get food, power, water, communications, you're exhausted. And long-term repairs take years, and folks just start accepting it as a new normal and move on. In some places, a considerable struggle to get back to pre-incident, and I think they take a long time. Major things like rebuilding, repair of infrastructure, mental health counseling, which is important because mental health gets put back and put back and put back, and people need that, and especially when you've been through something like that. But these things end up taking a long time, so it kind of gets worn out. So creating a plan considerations. So here you can access a lot of online information from those that have already completed a plan. Considerations, your ability to pay for planning or resources to help you, community groups, emergency services, partnerships, the time, again, we talked a lot about time. Knowledge and education, you're getting a little more knowledgeable today, I hope, and a lot of info out there, and it's not easy. Building relationships, you need to get out and do it. Lots of people are used to minding their own business, and that works until disaster strikes or a major emergency, and we end up depending on each other. Limitations of only getting ready on your own and not leveraging your neighbors or experts. You need to practice. That's a hard one. I know in my own personal family, my kids think I was crazy when we used to plan for emergencies, but because they lived in that world, that was what we did. They do it through schools all the time, so you need to practice it for your homes. Who to involve? It's usually those that you can help or they are going to help you, so you want to make sure you think from that perspective. Prevention of fraudulent workers prey on victims in disasters. So that happens always, especially around the hurricane or major disasters. People come in, they want to sell you something, they're lying, they're trying to scam you. So if they get you to sign on anything that's urgent or you have to pay right away, then you have to do a little bit more research because that's part of their system. They take money and they run. So just be aware of that. Gathering and interpreting data, COVID and how much info was out there and still is. I think that's a challenge for a lot of us to understand. Creating a plan for the community. So the entire community plan sometimes gets stalled or lose direction. Even when I just plan referred to reading it, they were over 1.5 years doing it, and they actually had a lot of stuff in place. And if you look through what that takes, so some places don't have that. I know I'm looking at some of the FEMA stuff, and if they've only been in a few hundred communities are involved, there's still a few hundred more that could be. So plans without great vision fluctuate from one leader to the next. So if you're going to have a plan, you think it's a community is going in that direction, you have to be patient, like I said, 1.5 years. But the goal would be to see leadership support by usually clear policy, direction, and resources to complete the plan. In the event you don't see that stuff, you can still influence them. So maybe try organizing for your building, neighborhood, street, and people get involved. And then once you start caring, then other people will jump in too if it's for the right reasons. Creating your personal plan. So you got to consider your challenges, as we talked about. It's just similar as the ones for the community. Communication, we talked about that personally. Geographic location, all those people that are living remote, they know that, but they still might, it usually takes 1 day, it could take 2 days now to get help, finding the time, practicing, money, assessing your risks. That's for your personal side, it takes a little bit more work than it does just reading from something else. And reaching out to your neighbors who have actually been there, done it before, and will be your partners during this, whether you believe it or not, when you're getting it. You're developing a plan, you're already doing that, so you're getting a little bit more informed today, and please share this information with others. You might develop a plan, assemble your kits, learn to practice, whether you're things like sheltering in place or evacuating, how you're going to do that. Identify community warning systems and evacuation routes. Learn your community and including school plans. Learn what to do for specific hazards and maintain your plan. So in looking at planning and setting up planning for yourself, this last hyperlink I have on here, I'll try to share it with you. It comes in. Is it sharing?
We're seeing the loading screen right now, but I'll let you know once it pops up.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about other things while it loads. Just let me know if you see it come up. The emergency alert system can address the entire nation on very short notice. So ask if your local radio or TV stations participate in it. So you need to know nowadays whether it overrides internet radio and TV, like our Amber alerts we get. Sometimes I'm listening to the radio and I'm listening to Florida radio living in Wisconsin, so I wonder why the weather's telling me different things. But during all of the alerts during the last hurricanes, it was always kept repeating in mind. So I was listening to radio in the wrong spot. So just make sure that you have a system in place if you are listening to internet radio that doesn't tell where your location is, that it can work in that. And you also want to consider two plans, one for sheltering in place and the other one for evacuation. So if you're thinking along that line, then you can kind of do that. So did it show up at all?
No, it's still just on the loading wheel. I'm sorry.
Okay, this one's a little bit, it is kind of interesting though.
Oh, it just popped up.
Okay.
It just came up.
Okay, perfect. So are you on, can you see the map? Is there a map on the one you're looking at?
Oh, no, I'm looking at like a PDF of some kind of a checklist grid.
Oh, so you're still, it's just stuck on an old one.
Yeah. Do you want me to put it back on the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'll just.
Oh, there we go. Now we're back on the slide. Oh no, we lost David altogether. I imagine he may be X'd out of the screen, guys, so let's just give us a minute so that he can join back in. I apologize for that.
One, two, three, four. Am I back?
Welcome back, David. You're presenter again.
Okay, I was lost. It kicked me right out. I had to log right back into the site. Okay, so where are we here? Creating a plan. I can't see what slide I'm on.
It's on the creating a plan personal slide.
Yeah, I got, what number is it down the bottom? I've got like in the bottom corner.
31.
Okay, 31. I gotta back up a bit. So I'll go 32. So I don't don't think I've spoke to this one. So 32, so start to put a plan together by discuss with your family, friends, or household how you're going to get your alerts. Are they going to come wireless through the FEMA app, weather radio, etc.? What is my shelter in place or evacuation plan? Like if we're going to a mass care facility, what are the evacuation routes? What is my family communication plan? We talked about that often. Do we need to update my emergency preparedness kit? So when you're looking at it, tailor your plan supplies to your specific daily and living responsibility needs, keeping in mind the ages of members within your household, responsibilities for assisting others, locations frequented, dietary needs, medical needs, including prescriptions and equipment, disabilities or access and functional needs, including devices and equipment, languages spoken, cultural and religious considerations, pets or service animals, households with school-age children, personal papers and documents like Social Security, wills, insurance, etc. And creating a document for referral if separated when disaster hits. So we talked a little bit about this, not that I was totally separated from my family, but your house, phones and address numbers that someone else can have. Family members, you need to know their names, social media. You might only be able to contact them or see what they're doing on social media. Email, important medical information for others that may be caring, the school, childcare, caregivers, and workplaces. Name, contact, emergency hotlines, emergency pickup locations, or who can pick them up, emergency contact phones, etc. Emergency meeting places, location, instructions, medical information, poison control, doctor name and contact, allergies, insurance info, assisted devices, veterinarians, pet information. Creating a plan continued, build a basic disaster supply kit that can fit into 1 or 2 bags. If possible, keep in 3 locations, home, car, or work. Generally, home's a priority. Car, if you can get to it. Work is that where you're going, but we all kind of usually rely on home a little more than others. So in that, you want to include water, 1 gallon per day for drinking and sanitation. Food, several days, non-perishable. Battery-powered radios, flashlights, first aid kits, extra batteries, whistles so you can signal for help. People don't realize if you're under a building or in a bad area that the screech of the whistle is actually really helpful for people to be able to find you. And I don't know that they make them anymore, but the old ball whistles don't work well when they're full of dust and everything. So you buy a whistle that actually works when it's dirty. Dust masks, if things have been fallen or to keep your breathing clear. Plastic sheeting, scissors and tape if you're especially sheltering in place, moist towelettes, garbage bags and plastic ties for personal sanitation, wrenches or pliers, manual can opener if you have canned food, local maps, cell phone with chargers and battery backup. Additional items, soap, medications, prescription and non-medication. So we kind of always would take a prescription, but you don't think about non-prescription stuff that you rely on. Eyeglasses, something to clean them up if you're in a situation where they've become dirty. Infant supplies, pet food, cash, important family documents, and keep all this stuff in a waterproof container. Sleeping bags, blankets, complete change of clothes, fire extinguisher, waterproof matches, containers, feminine supplies, paper cups, plates, and all that stuff, paper and pencil, books, games, puzzles, or children activities. And again, back on personal experience, when we went through Ian, we were almost 6 hours and very high winds and lots of cranking and noise and don't know when the tornadoes are coming or not. And we had to keep our kids occupied. I have 2 young grandchildren. And to keep them concentrating, we had to play books, or we played with games and stuff in the house that did not need a lot of light. So you have things you just don't think about till you live through one or you are in one. So finally, in conclusion, everyone in the community plays an important role in emergency preparedness. Everyone needs to understand where they fit into the greater plan for their own personal success. You have to consider insurance, keeping everything updated. That one we'll keep repeating because that's probably the most important, and you won't be able to rely on or depend on them. Planning, practicing, and reviewing continuously are key elements to success surviving a natural disaster or major emergency. Seeking and maintaining internal and external relationships to support all stages of emergency preparedness make it easier for everyone involved. We must remain vigilant, watching for trends and new challenges, whether they be legal, technological, funding, the frequency increase in disasters, and to evolve as required. Tribal communities have unique needs to preserve our way of life. Our planning must incorporate protection or recovery of those established customs to maintain our resiliency. We need to start somewhere and design locally prior to formal approaches. We still responded and survived with everyone helping each other as neighbors. So formal preparedness still relies on that. I think it relies on that more than anything else, because in those first few hours, that's what you're going to be living and relying on. And then it's only done in a broader spectrum where you're including the departments and people with access to resources that you may get to, but you don't have during and immediately after. So finally, don't rely on anyone to keep you safe. It's your responsibility to do that. So our dependence on others doesn't work when you're in that time. So having said that, I'd like to thank everybody for their time. It was excellent. I hope you've got some information that you can take back to your communities. And for those that already have great plans in place, that's awesome. And for those that have nothing, I hope we've shared enough information at least to get you started and give you some links to access.
Thank you so much for this amazing presentation, David. And I do want to assure you, there is some kind of an issue going on with our attendees joining. Some of them are not able to see the course. We weren't able to figure out what's wrong. But I do want to shout out Angelica. I'm so happy that you were able to join. Somehow you were the only one able to get on. So I wanted to say I'm so sorry about that, David. But we have the recording, so people will still be able to benefit from all this incredible information. The PDF that's available for download, y'all, that does have both the videos that David played, as well as all of the links housed within. I'm going to put that link into the chat, and I have already shared the webinar feedback survey today, if y'all don't mind completing that. It does just take a minute or two. It lets us know what's working well, like our amazing instructors, and what's not working well, like people being able to join the webinar today. So again, I sincerely apologize on behalf of the Native Learning Center that this error occurred. We're not really sure what happened just yet, but again, we do have the recording. I'm so sorry about that. Our next webinar is actually going to be tomorrow. This is going to be a rare Wednesday webinar. This is all about a petition to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. This is going to be given by the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy. It's going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. And this is giving really valuable information about some of the unfortunate roadblocks that have kind of appeared that are getting in the way of tribes being able to access the funding for clean energy. So join that webinar, find out the information, and hopefully you and your tribe can sign on to that petition so that the Alliance can get rid of these roadblocks that have gotten in the way. Feel free to access this as well as our other recorded webinars. We have moved the archive, to our YouTube channel. So the link is there. It's also way earlier on in the chat, and I'll put it in the chat once again. We hope you can check out our other upcoming events. You can hear about them on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we do have our in-house produced podcast, the Hope of Thinking Native American podcast. You can catch that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Simplecast. And if you like watching the videos with our guests, you can check that on our YouTube channel as well. But again, thank you, David, for such an amazing presentation. Thank you, Angelica, our attendee who was able to join. We're so happy that you're able to be here. And to everybody else who's watching the recording, we appreciate y'all, and we hope that you can connect with us again really soon. Oh yeah, I'm glad you're able to get on too, Angelica. I don't know what's going on with the other folks because it's open, but we got this recording. So if anybody needs to go back and review, if you want to see the first half that you didn't see at Angelica, it is going to be posted to the course here on the learning website, and it's also going to be on our YouTube channel. So everybody can check that out. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar, guys, but I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but everybody have a fantastic rest of your week. And if you celebrate Halloween, happy early Halloween. And we'll speak with you guys soon. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.